Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast, a space where we embrace our marks acquired through our journey. My name is Elizabeth Savillon, and welcome to another episode of this podcast. I am here at Hi Hello Labs in downtown Orlando in this beautiful studio space, and if you have any production, audio, podcasting needs, they are the place to go. I've been with them for a while now, this whole year, so it's been awesome with them, their team, and I'm just super grateful for this space. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and let me know what you're loving. I actually wanted to read a review because I've gotten a few ones in September, and so I wanted to do a little shout out for Mayra, which she said, best podcast, one of my favorite podcasts, always feel encouraged and understood, great place for women of all walks of life to come together and grow together. So thank you, Mayra, for the shout out, and thank you for following this podcast. And each of your guys' feedback really matters because that helps to know what kind of content to make, but also that I know that it's for someone out there. So every episode, when you guys share on your stories or you guys let me know something that resonates with you, is just a reminder that how similar we can be in our walks and that we all experience a lot of the same things. We just sometimes don't talk about it openly. So this podcast space is that. And so for this month, She Cultivates, if you are in Orlando, we are having a women's event where we are doing a paint and sip coffee event. And if you guys see my hat, it's definitely a coffee, Jesus, and therapy girly. And that's something that I love to do, but I know a lot of you guys love going to your local coffee shops to enjoy. And so coffee shops literally is like a feel good, homey feeling when you go to one. And so we've been doing our events there. And so if you want to connect with other women, paint, create, and just be around other people here in Orlando, we are having that October 21st. You can buy your tickets at shecultivatesorl.com, and we will be having our last event in November, and that date will be published soon. So make sure to follow She Cultivates ORL as well as Elizabeth Savvy for all that information. I honestly love like the fall time and there's like so many activities to do. So I have already started looking for like going to Southern Hills Farms, going to different things for pumpkin patches. And also because like my niece, like she's like almost 2. So it's like being able to do all those activities with her and the kids is just so much fun. And also with friends, and like the fall season, I feel like brings people together because there's so many different activities. And the part of like with who you're doing it with really does matter. So if you don't got a boo, but you have some friends, it's still so fun, and even with your family. So this past weekend, I went to something called Unbreakable, which was hosted by Demi Tebow, which Dr. Caroline Leaf was there, which you guys know I talk about her a lot because she's huge on like the brain, mental health, neuroscience, and she's such like a scientist. And so it's funny because a lot of women, it's mostly like a dominant male field, and her speaking, she just spoke about the brain, the neuroscience way that our brain waves work, and like our mind and our body and our mental health. And her sharing that, I was like, as I was listening to her, I was like, oh my gosh, she's such a scientist, because she's literally trying to break it down so simple, but it's like you can tell that she was using all these big words that a lot of people were like, what is happening? So I actually ended up getting her book, and it's called Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess. And let's just say that she signed it, and I will forever have this copy because I am fangirling. So she actually signed my book, and we took a picture and we talked, and she has like amazing skin. That's like besides the point, but she's definitely super kind, and just being able to meet her, and just because that has been such a big part of my journey of like my mental health, is just learning how like our brain and body are all connected. Like it's like mind, soul, body, versus how I used to think that everything was very separate. And so I used to think that like, okay, if I'm physically fit, right, that is what health looks like, or that's what actual wholeness looks like. Or if I'm mentally okay, like that's all, but no, it's like all together how it works, and like how our body keeps the score of a lot of the things that we walk through. And so her work has literally been life-changing to me. And she talked a lot about just how what goes into the mind, like how to control that. And she talked about how like it goes, thoughts that come to our mind and what we process then goes to like our brain, and then it goes into our body, and that's how we feel it, and that's how we store it. So that's how like trauma is stored in the body, or even the way that our perspective of life is. It's really through like that process, allowing that. And she talked about how like habits and things that we want to see changes really don't take 21 days to do. It's actually 63 days. So it's 63 days of creating new pathways to actually stick to something. That's like 9 weeks. And so when we think about like how we think about ourselves, or like the little habits that we make, that we do every single day, that's why they say it's really not the long-term thing. It's like how short-term habits that you do daily create like the life that you want. And because it's like as simple as your alarm clock, right? Like if you set up yourself to always snooze your alarm clock, or never commit to something that you said that you were going to do in the morning, it starts creating that it's like you lack the consistency. And before you know it, that shows up in your life, because you're like training yourself daily to do that. So when you've done that for 21 days, for 9 weeks, that's the result of that. Versus when creating new habits, it's like you have to stick through it. And it's kind of like not feeling good when you're doing it, because it's not natural, because you've created a pathway and a brainwave that has been this way for such a long time. So to change that, that's why it's so difficult. But something that she talks about so well was just how like, just because we've been doing something a certain way, the brain also shows that you can create new ways of doing things and you can change. And so that gives us hope to know that like, no matter if you've been doing this for 25 years, if you've been doing this for 30 years, it takes time, but it's possible to see those changes that you want to see in your life. And so I was just really encouraged this weekend, felt very empowered, because they talked really about like just mind, body, soul all together. And they even had a self-defense class, which you guys know I took one this summer with She Cultivates. But being able to learn other things and feeling like powerful and knowing that you are worthy of being safe and worthy of defending yourself and setting the boundaries. Something that I took away from that session, even though it was like self-defense, they talked about how a big part of self-defense is also using your voice. So also like putting a boundary with someone. So like, let's say someone's coming up to you and you kind of, you know how like we don't make eye contact when we are like trying to avoid talking to someone, which I do it a lot. I'm like, oh, didn't see them. Oh, but like, instead of facing it, of acknowledging it and saying like, I see you, I don't feel safe, and verbalizing that like, hey, like, don't come closer. Or like, hey, I said that I don't feel safe. Like, what do you want? If that's like someone coming up to you and you don't know the intention. And so it was just the way that she broke it down of like using your voice and feeling worthy of feeling safe, and all of that is so much deeper than the self-defense part. And there was another session that we talked about just not letting your story, like even though you have gone through hard things, not letting your story define how it's going to look like in the future, which I talk about here a lot. That knowing your story is really what empowers you to create a new story, because a lot of us, we've all experienced things in life that we don't like talking about, or we don't really share, and we don't have to brand ourselves like this is what fully happened. But I think that a part of it is understanding what you've been through, but also making the changes necessary to not either repeat what we've been taught or repeat our story narrative, and change that for better. And so just knowing that you have the power to do that you have the ability to do that through like your support system, through getting the help that you need. And all of that played a big part, and just seeing Demi and the work that they're doing. And it was just amazing. Like, I feel like I've gone to different events, and I love going to women empowerment events, because I just feel like it's so great seeing women come together, the topics that are necessary to talk about, to be uplifting, to just leave. Like, me and Ashley went and we were both like, wow, that was like so good. Like, we're still processing. And like through the lunch break, I'm like, are you still processing? Like, what was your best part? And she's like, I knew you were going to ask that. I'm still processing. We will talk about it later. Because it was just like so much good information. And just seeing another big takeaway from that event was just seeing how what has happened to you, you can actually use for good. So the difference between people that go through hard things and people that kind of overcome it is being able to use it to help others, like using the things that we've been through to educate, inform, empower other people through what we've gone through. And that doesn't always mean a platform like this. It doesn't mean that. It means in your own circle, in your own community, being able to serve people because you understand what you've been through. And that walk is something unique to you. And so with Demi sharing about her, kind of like assault situation that she had, of like a carjacking situation, and her being like, hey, like I want people to feel safe within their body, and I want people to feel like they have the tools and to equip them with the tools. So she's used what she's gone through to be able to help other people, and her influence, because she is very influential. So I think that was another part, is seeing how like the big shift of when things happen to us, it's when we're able to work through it to help others. Like, I feel like that is so healing, and that's so empowering for us that have been through it, but also for other people to help them through. So really needed this weekend, really enjoyed it. And now how this week is World Mental Health Day, which is actually October 10th. And that is all about bringing awareness to mental health, ending the stigma of mental health, and seeing how this year's theme is about making sure that everyone feels that they have access, and they should have access to their mental health, and they should care for their mental health, no matter race, gender, financial status, all of those things, because we all, especially right now, that's a really big epidemic in mental health. And like as little as like kids, like I'm talking about like elementary school kids. And that has a lot to do with a lot of factors like social media. That has a lot of factors to do with just the way that people are raised very differently and the access that they have to things. And so that is like something. So I was thinking, I'm like, me as an adult that can struggle with my mental health, but when you're so young and you don't have first, your brain isn't fully developed, but also it's like you don't have the tools or the support for that, that can be really hard. And I know that for me, I didn't get the help that I needed when I was young, and I wasn't able to afford it either, and my parents didn't have that. So just being able as an adult, for you to make sure to look for that help, but also if you have kids, that is something that they can learn as early as 2 years old, of how to manage their emotions, how to deal with their emotions, which is something that a lot of us weren't taught. We weren't taught emotional language. We weren't taught those things that can help us as adults, because a lot of that mirrors from like how we are as a child till how we are as an adult. And so that is a really big part of understanding that our mental health has a lot to do with our physical well-being, our emotional well-being, the way that we show up in the world. And I remember feeling very, very numb to like 2018 to 2020 when I really struggled with my mental health. And I've shared a little bit before, but I shared this past week that when I think back to like the moments that, because I know it has been a while since I talked about this, but in like around 21, like right after I graduated college, or the semester I graduated college, I started a job that was like in events, marketing, social media for this company. And I got these amazing opportunities. So I had great benefits. I got access to all the parks. I connected with like the CEO of the company. And so when that happened, she connected me to travel to like Las Vegas, Washington, to kind of like do her social media and like makeup. It was an interesting thing. I was not doing that on my job, but I have done makeup before. And so she actually met me through an event, and she's like, oh my God, I love your makeup. Her assistant reached out to me and she's like, I would love for you to teach me how to do my makeup. And so I actually went to her house and taught her makeup, and it was like a very cool experience. But I was flying private with them, and I was probably 22 at this point. So imagine, it's like you're living like this like really cool like goal life. It's like you get to travel, you get to fly private, you can have all these connections. And I was traveling a lot with like friend groups, and like I was in a whole bunch of bridal parties, and like I felt quote unquote, right? Like my life was full, right? But during those years, I was really struggling with my mental health. And when I look back at those pictures and those opportunities that I had, I feel like I was very numb to it. Like, I feel like it was like I was living in it, but I wasn't living in it, if you know what I mean. Like, I was very numb to the fullness of accepting all the things that were happening in my life, of being able to take it all in, being able to see the life that I had as like a blessing, you know, because I was struggling. I was struggling with depression, anxiety. I was in an unhealthy relationship that was really affecting my body, my life. And I just felt like I just dealt a lot with like comparison and insecurity. And so I was living these opportunities, but I felt like I wasn't present there. And when I look now to the life that I have, and what I'm doing today and how I feel, like I am literally the most emotionally healthy I've ever been in my life. And the gift that I have today is that I am fully present where I'm at, and I'm fully like able to grasp and take in the things that are happening around me. Like I'm fully like aware of them, versus when I was numbed out and I felt like I was very disconnected to myself. And so when things happen, like this past week, I was invited to like an event, and I felt like so grateful because I'm like, wow, like I'm here, like I get to be around these people, and I'm so happy to be doing something that I enjoy and that I love and that I've worked hard for, and just like accepting it, and just so grateful for this season of my life. Even this podcast, being able to do this, like it's so surreal because I dreamed about this, but I know if I would have had it at the time that I really wanted that, like I feel like I would not be able to take it all in like how I am today. And it's not that it's perfect, and it's definitely not that I have it all figured out. It's just that I feel like the mental health part that I felt and I have today, I'm able to navigate things differently and life differently versus then. And so I haven't shared that in a while. And so I wanted to share it because I had some people ask me like, how do you show up confidently? And how do you show up like, and there are new people that haven't been around through the journey of like and they haven't known me since I was like in 2018. And if you have been here for a while and you have seen the evolution of my life and how things have gone, you would know that is like, I've shared the highlights, but I've also shared the downfalls. And the downfalls now I feel like are things that I'm still working through, of course, like, you know, navigating my traumas in dating, navigating certain triggers, family dynamics, but it's not how it was before. And I hope that encourages you to know that you can get the help that you need. I know for a while I paid out of pocket most of my sessions. So this might surprise someone, but I have probably spent maybe $10,000 or more on my therapy sessions over the past since I was like 19. And I did the math the other day. And so that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because I'm like, it has been fully an investment towards my mental health. And some people, I know that they will never get that help, and I will never bash someone if they don't. Like, I completely understand it's a personal journey, but that has been the biggest investment for me, to get the help that I needed, to go through my trauma work, to feel like I can be healthy from the inside out. And for so long, I would do like out of pocket. And so I would pay out of pocket. And actually, it's not this past year, this past month, I finally got my insurance to pay for it. So yay, like that is a huge thing, because girl, I was paying some I was paying a lot monthly. And this has been since I was like 19. So to finally have my insurance pay for it, just want to say that if you need to look to see if your insurance accepts it, you can end up paying anywhere from $5 to $20 copay. That's literally like 2 coffees. That's 1 coffee. So just being able to have that, it was such a blessing. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, this is amazing to have that. So so there's that help that you can get through your insurance, but also BetterHelp has a great service for you if you need any options, and that's very online. And also you can change your therapist whenever, so it's an awesome opportunity too. So if you are local or if you are international, wherever you are at, there's those opportunities for you. And you can always ask me for recommendations and I will send that to you. But all that to say is that was a huge investment to me. And some people might be like, that is crazy, I could never. But think about it. You can spend that stuff on food. You can spend that stuff on shopping. You can spend that stuff, like, it adds up either way. So it's like, how are you spending and investing? People do that with their personal training. People do that with the things that they intake, like all the stuff, like when you're really into the gym, all the protein powders and all the things that you invest in, like everyone, you put your money where you see the value. And so that is something that I have seen the return on investment is on myself, and being able to show up in a better way and have the tools that I need necessary to navigate these things. And so the books that have helped me, just so you guys know, I wanted to share that all of this will be in the show notes under, but a few of the books that have really helped me and transformed my life, if let's say you never will go to therapy, these are books that you can read. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of things out there that you can learn from, and even situational things. But this podcast, as much as I share information, I feel like it is a personal journey for you. So if you're in a specific situation, that's when you can get help from someone else. So the books that have helped me, especially when I first started, was Boundaries by Henry Cloud, which they have boundaries in dating and regular boundaries. Codependent No More, because I was huge into the people pleasing, no boundaries, codependency, attachment, anxious attachment, surviving and thriving after narcissistic abuse, which literally explained like how I felt in most situations. And it was a great book. Also Attached, which talks about how to have a relationship and how to be aware of how you attach in a relationship versus and the categories are like anxious attachment, fearful, avoidant, and secure attachment. And so all of that was explained, and I feel like that like helped me to understand it so well. And then also Body Keeps the Score, which talked about how our body stores trauma based on things that we have experienced, and how we're able to see like chronic illnesses and things maybe even our families, like generational. I know that I was raised by very, very strong parents, but it's because they lived on survival mode, and when they tell me stories of their childhood, I'm like, that sounds traumatic. That doesn't sound like that's amazing that you did that, but like that sounds so traumatizing. But for them, those were like normal days, like trying to figure out how they're going to feed their family of 11, and having to walk to the river and come back and walk miles by themselves when they were like 6, 7 years old. And just things that they experienced that I'm like, that is a lot. And that explains why a lot of, since their family members are like have health problems from such a young age, and I'm talking about even 40s, 50s, and then their bones and their back and their muscles, and so that book really explains that and how we store that in our body. And then another kind of like helped me through like my forgiveness journey, which I know that is a little controversial when it comes to it, but I know like my faith and my convictions, I know that a part of you healing is also forgiving and letting go. And it's not to affirm or to allow and say that behavior was good. But I feel like when you get to the place where you have your own closure and you're able to be separated from the situation that happened to you and say, you know what? That just wasn't for me. And I was telling my friend the other day that I'm glad that I didn't talk through my wounds the first 1 or 2 years of my podcast and like bash certain people or say certain things. And I think that was wisdom, because sometimes a lot of us are talking out of our pain, and it sounds so differently when you're talking out of your healing. So now I'm able to look at my abuse or my unhealthy relationship and see it very, very differently. Do certain things come up? Absolutely. But I feel like I'm separated and know that there was some responsibility that I take, and other that I feel like there's just certain things that it just didn't work out, or there was brokenness, or there was, you just are able to see it so differently. And I'm not trying to excuse abuse or anything like that, but I feel like a big part of my healing has been the process of forgiveness and letting go, and not trying to get vengeance on people, because that is not ours. The vengeance and the justice is not ours. And sometimes time will tell things and be more telling, and you will reap what you sow. And I believe that wholeheartedly. So that has been a big part of my journey. And so forgiving what you can't forget was a huge help towards like really getting to the root of certain wounds that I had, and certain forgiveness that I had to make. And that was a hard journey of grief and all of that, but that helped me, So the lessons that I feel like I share today were a lot of different things that have helped me through my journey, and tools that I've taken through the years of therapy. But this is not just to encourage you to go to therapy. This is just to share a little bit of my walk that's taken years. Like you have created a pattern or a way of life for so many years. So to get out of that, it will take some time. Something that one of the speakers said this weekend that I was like, ooh, when you live in survival mode and detach from your body as a child, you have to become even more aware of your body and be so intentional as an adult, because your natural state will always be to disconnect from your body and to be not in alignment. So you'll push away the feelings, you'll become more busy, you'll become addicted to certain things, you'll tend to self-soothe in certain ways because you don't want to deal with the feelings. And so a part of the healing is dealing with the feeling. And I can be very hyper vigilant, very disconnected from myself. So I have to be aware of that. And so the last things I want to leave with you guys are just a few lessons that I've learned in therapy. Some I already talked about, but I want to just reinstate that our mental health is just as important as how people put our physical health. So we can eat the healthiest foods, we can take the vitamins, but if we do not take care of our mind, that will also affect our body, which is what you are, right? Trying to get better. So it's like all of them working together is the goal. Is not just being physically at a certain place, which I know our society plays a really big part in that. But I just want to remind you that it's all working together, and me being mentally okay, that is the inner peace that I have always wanted. That is the not allowing other things that happen around me affect how I feel on the inside. Like that has been so powerful to have. The second thing is having boundaries and saying no doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Actually having boundaries and learning to have a voice in things, it creates such freedom, because then you're able to share what you want, what you need, and that is not equal not being nice. Like that's actually valuing and being kind to yourself. So knowing how to set those boundaries and learning what you need is so important for you to show up in a way that you don't feel guilty in relationships, that you don't feel like you're forced into certain things, that you're doing things out of being conscious and aware of the decisions that you're making. And when your body says, no, I don't feel comfortable with this, you actually verbalizing that. And that has been so helpful. The other thing is that a big part of that, which what I was just talking about, is our body gives us signals. So listen to those signals. Depression, anxiety are all prolonged things that we haven't dealt with. So like if you had like, it's like a car light in our car that's like going on, and I know I'm a girl, so I know I do it. I see the little like tire thing and I'm like, I will get to it tomorrow. And then a week later, it's like, I will get to it eventually. And that's like the little warning, like, hey, and then before you know it, your tire like explodes on the road. And that's when you're like, I should have taken care of it. It's like those warning signals, like the things that we feel in our body, how we feel. But the longer we don't deal with it, that's when it leads to certain things that then it's harder to get out and it's harder to deal with. So it's important to be aware and in tune with our bodies and be in tune with the work and the signals that it's giving us. The other part is that a big part is forgiveness of others is one thing, but the forgiveness of ourselves. I feel like through therapy, it has been a grief journey that has taught me to learn to forgive myself for the things that I didn't know, for the things that I was taught, and I have had to learn new ways that maybe were different than what I was taught. Having to have compassion with the remembering of things that I did that I wish that I didn't do, but it's the compassion that you have to give to yourself and the forgiveness. And I feel like a big part of my healing journey has been forgiving myself. And so that is something that I don't think I was given the space to do that until I was actually through therapy, was like having those conversations and like would be writing them out of like a letter to my younger self. And so that was very freeing to me. So reminding yourself that you also are worthy of forgiveness and compassion for yourself. The other part is how our childhood has a lot to do with how we show up in relationships as adults. And so the person as an adult that sometimes is talking is not really you, it's the wounds of our childhood. And a lot of the needs that we have are things that maybe we haven't been able to have or give ourselves. And so we're asking, or we're showing up in this like anxiousness in relationships, or like abandonment wound, which that was like a huge part for me, is the fear of someone leaving, or the fear of someone proving to me that I'm not worthy to be loved, or that I have to change to be loved. And so those things came from my childhood. And so going through those places where we're a little difficult, I feel like all those things showed me areas that I needed to work on so that I can show up in dating differently or show up in certain relationships differently. So understanding how one does tie with the other. And so a lot of people don't like to talk about their childhood, which I get it. It's sometimes things that are like, why are we going to talk about the past? But there's so much stuff that you can create closure. And like kind of, I see it like you're kind of like putting things into files and boxes like in your head to be like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. And it's like you're able to see it and understand your story, and you're able then to understand like, this is why this happened. And it doesn't excuse my behavior, but I'm able to now see and change those things if I don't want the same result through different things. And a really big one too, even though it's probably very self-explanatory, I think I found and I finally understood that I can't change anybody but myself. That as hard as it is to work and change things about myself, imagine us trying to do that for other people. Like, it's impossible. So it's like releasing that control and releasing that like, I need to change this, or like, let me do this to like manipulate the, like that's really like what we're trying to do. We're trying to change someone outside of ourselves that like we have no control of, like at all. And we don't want that control. Like, no, like it's freedom of not having to control anybody else, of just being in control and working on ourselves. And then that actually can sometimes influence people to do the work for themselves when we're able to do that and we're able to like start those little changes. Because a lot of the time I can see how I played a part in the dynamic that I was in. The last part is how just because you have trauma or you have a lot of things that you have to work on, don't see yourself as broken. Like, everything can be worked through. You can create a beautiful life no matter what you have gone through. And it may take time and it may be years, but you can builds a better life than what you have experienced in the past. So doing the work is worth it, being intentional with that, and seeing how in time you'll look back and be like, I handled that differently and I'm proud of myself. Or I would have been very, very different this time, but I was faced with this and I did not go back to what I did before. And those are huge, like it builds your self-confidence to know that it's like, I am doing the work and I am reacting differently, and I'm not tied to like the past of who I was or what I did or didn't do. So I hope that it helped you today. I know I talk about mental health a lot, but I hope that it helps you to know and to have these conversations. Not even, maybe you're the only one that's listening to my podcast, and that's okay, but even with your friends, even with your family members, to have these kind of conversations and do those mental check-ins that are far from just the outside. It's like having those inward conversations of like, how are you really? Like, touch base with your body. How am I feeling? What's going on? Am I like reactive? Am I numbing out? Am I just very irritable? Like, what is happening right now? And like having that mental check-in for yourself. And then if you need to get help, making sure to do so. And so all the resources and everything will be down below. And I hope that you know that you're not alone, that you are so loved and you are worthy of healing, of feeling loved, of feeling wholeness. And make sure to share this with a friend, leave a review, and I will see you guys next week.